Okay, hello and welcome back to Zoink TV. I'm Andrew Weir, and in this video I'm going to be going through some low poly techniques in Blender 2.72. So when I say low poly techniques, I mean I've got three examples on the screen of what I consider to be important high poly techniques or high poly models, and we're going to make them into low poly models. So just they need to be imagined as various object types. So I'm going to go through that because at the moment the ones that I've got on my screen are really basic, but in the future the same techniques will transfer onto more advanced models. So on the left here I've got an example of hard surface modeling. So you can Google hard surface modeling and you'll get results like guns, tanks, vehicles, and anything that's kind of got these sharp edges, or more like flat faces, and it's quite a specific example, but it's one of the most basic modeling techniques. It actually includes subdividing, so the actual model itself is really basic, just like that. But when we look at the edit mode, we can see that it's not actually very basic. So it's got all these constraining loops which allow the subdivision surface to give you a nice result. So that's one example of a high poly model, and obviously from the high poly we're then going to want to bake down the normals, which I'm not going to go through any of this, but it's the process. So we'll need to create a low poly model, and the same thing goes for this, which is sculpted in Blender, but you could import sculpts from ZBrush or any other software, and that's got a multi-sub or multi-resolution modifier, which basically means that I can again take this back to a cube, and you know, we could get some low poly results of the same shape, but it's not exactly the right edge flow or anything like that they might want. So we're going to retopologize that, and then we've got a really messy, really high poly kind of a cloth simulation is what I use to make the shape, but for this example it's like the other two options would take too long to actually put this into a low poly shape, so we're going to look at the third one on that. But I'm going to start off with low poly from a hard surface model, and basically I'm going to duplicate this with Shift D, and then I'm going to delete the subdivision surface. So now I've got high poly and low poly, but the low poly at the moment isn't actually low poly, because it looks like this. So there is a reason I've got this shape set up the way it is, and firstly we can delete all the obvious extra constraining edges. So I'm going to use Alt, I'm on edge mode, I'm going to use Alt and right click to select the entire edge, because I know all these extra edges that I've added, I know that I can delete them by selecting them all, just like this. So I'm going to zoom in for these two on the inside. I should have some on the outside of that, but I made this shape pretty quickly, so just for the tutorial, so we can see how it's done. So I think that's most of them. Try and get all of them. And then just delete edge loops, and then we're left with the basic low poly. And some people might just stop there, but this isn't actually low poly because there's some pointless vertices in there that we don't need. So let's start using the second most important tool. So we can use that to select any edge loops, but if we've got a situation like this, I can't select this whole edge loop and delete edge loop because it gets a bit more messy than we'd like it to be. Like, I'm not sure what's happening in there, but it's not quite the right result. So what we can do instead is start to merge these, and I mostly do some low poly stuff in 3ds Max, and they've got a target world kind of thing going on. It's essentially the same thing, apart from for Blender you have to select each node, each vertex, sorry, and then press Alt M, and we've got a few options. I'm going to go for merge at last, and now we don't want to press Alt M every time we do that because we're going to be doing it like thousands of times. So instead, on the other side, I'm going to use Shift R, and I'm already holding down Shift because I've just selected those two. So I'm going to press Shift R now, and it's repeated. But you've got to be careful because the repeat button, obviously if I want to move this and then I press Shift R on here, it's going to move it the same distance. But it might not, you might have accidentally done an action in between what you want to repeat, and then it'll repeat the wrong thing. But for me, I'm just pressing Alt M, merge at last, and then Shift R. So we're going to bring all these corner pieces towards a relevant edge, and then these middle ones again, well, we're going to do it here instead. Which is why I created this shape, because it's got this part in the middle and it's got edges that we can't just select and delete. But now I can select this entire edge loop and delete the edge loop, and it should work it out, but it's messed it up a little bit there. So I'm going to see what it does if I delete that again. And it's not giving me the exact thing I wanted to do, so I think I'm just going to undo that. Merge them again and select a different one. So that one should work fine if I delete the edge loop. Oh yeah, sorry, I've got to be in edge mode for this. Delete the edge loop in edge mode, and that will work fine. So right now it's not sensing where the edge loops are, so it probably would have been better just to, for some reason, like, sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. It should work, but in this case it's not, so I'm just going to merge them. So we're just getting rid of any unnecessary loops. I could, on a more advanced shape, mirror down the middle, because that wouldn't be too bad. But for this one it was really basic, so I'm just going to repeat it. And you have to do this loads. Well, the reason I'm doing it so much right now is because the previous attempt at clicking the entire ring loop didn't work. But originally, if you delete the edge loop, then you should get a good result. So I'll delete them. And hopefully that hasn't put any extra vertices in there. No, we're okay. So I've gone to vertex mode, just check that there's no vertices in odd places. But that looks alright. Now we need this part here, but it's not quite finished, so we'll merge that. And that looks alright, that. And that's basically, you know, just two basic tools, just deleting edge loops and merging. And you've got to do that through the entire thing until you cut off any unnecessary vertices and edges. And we don't need these edges, but it doesn't really matter that there's an edge there, because you can put it into a quad, but the software reads it as two triangles anyway. So that's the low poly one. Now from there we could break down, but I'm not actually going to go through that. The second type is the kind of shape that's curved and it's been sculpted, so maybe a character model that you want to make low poly, and how we're going to do that. And as I say, you could, on this example, firstly put it to more of a low poly shape in the subdivisions. So in the multi-resolution you could bring it down a bit. But I'm going to keep it high because I'm going to be retopologizing this anyway. And retopology in Blender is one of the best things. So there's a few different ways you can do it, but I'm going to create a plane. I'm going to firstly snap the cursor to this object, so cursor to selected, and make a plane just so we get the object. See, that's there, but in edit mode I'm just going to delete that, and then I'm going to put it on snapping mode. But first of all, let's talk about the tool that I'm about to use, because in Blender, when you're in edit mode, you can press Control click and it puts a point there, a vertex just in the middle of where you clicked. But if I click twice, it creates a line, and then if I create kind of a quad, I can select all four of them and fill that in, and then from there I can extrude, you know, the edges, and we can create a low poly model using that kind of modeling. So what I'm going to do is put it on snapping to faces, so the face of this object, which means that when I press on the corner here, like I know I want the shape, so I click there, and that point is now stuck to the surface of that, which means I can put another one here, and it's not followed the exact shape obviously because we've only got 2 points for it to go through, but from there we could add a ring loop maybe in the middle with with Control R, grab that and move it up, and that'll put it on the surface. But we're not going to follow the exact shape. We can just make an outline of what we've got here and start filling in faces. It's a good idea to think about edge flow, so maybe over these two arches, maybe I want to put a vertex here, select these two, and then extrude in edge mode, and at the moment I haven't got the correct setting on. I'll just put it to I'll just hit this button here so that so it's not working out from one vertex, it's going to work it out from both of them. So if it goes uneven, they'll keep it roughly in line. And I'm just going to extrude over the top here, rotate a bit, extrude, extruding with E, by the way. I assume that if you're looking at making things into low poly, you know some modelling, but you don't necessarily know the techniques. And I haven't really focused on how low poly that is. We can always go in there and delete the edge loops just like before if we decide that we didn't want some of those loops. But now that I've done that, I can also extrude down here, start creating this shape. So I'm really just putting in some random edge loops, not very precise. But when I isolate the object with backwards slash, we can see that it's starting to build the same shape, but with less polys. So we're starting to build the low poly asset. And then I could continue on like this. Like I'll think about down here. Maybe I want an extra ring loop in there. I'll just so I can bring this edge along. Maybe for something that's quite straight like this, maybe I'll just want to bring it straight along. And then we've only got one poly there, going all the way down the model. And then we can think about how we're going to bring this together. If I wanted it to the edge flow to come round here and back to this side here. So let's I'll extrude that, rotate it a bit, extrude, rotate, extrude, and I think I'm going to bring it onto this one here. So I'm going to add a ring loop, bring that down. I'm going to press G twice to drag it along, and then I'm going to just keep extruding for the faces that I want to include, without any general idea at the moment. I'm just sharing the technique, and then I'm going to select these two, press F to fill in the face, and now we've got kind of a kind of enclosed area here that we can start thinking about how we're going to then fill that in to follow this shape. So I want to follow the exact same shape that I've already made, but I'm making it low poly. And I could follow loops in like that, but I think I'm going to keep going on with this this kind of technique that I've been doing, which is filling in the middle of the area. So I'm going to drag that along, and I'm going to get these two edges, fill in the face there, and then fill in the face here, add in some ring loops, and see how that follows this, which it isn't, it's beneath it. But I'm going to grab these vertices from the top view, and now they should all snap into the position that's following there. So I can see that maybe this vertex here isn't where I want it to be, so I'll snap that up. And at the moment maybe that one could be brought up here as well. And then from this point I think I'll have to put in enough ring loops here to compensate for the other side. So I've got 4 here being added because I've got 4 in the middle there. I'll do the same thing with the edge, and obviously if this were a character arm, you might want to do an edge flow that allows it to animate, but I'm just making this exact same shape very randomly, to be honest. But I think that I'll just start filling in those faces here because I think I've got enough detail. Select edge mode and speed things up. And now I haven't got enough information because I've got 2 edge loops here. So I'm going to put in 2 edge loops there, creating a shape that I can fix by cutting here with K. And then select these and fill it in. Maybe select that and press G twice just to drag it along. and fill in these final faces. So it's looking a little bit messy in this area. This one's a little bit out of place. So I could either maybe it's just one vertex that's out of place. So I could just grab it and move it along back into kind of in line with the others to keep kind of a good edge flow. Same with that one. Or I'll undo that, and we'll see on here if I select the entire edge and press W, there's a smooth button there, and if we keep smoothing it, it's going to bring it in. Sorry, I don't want to select these end ones. If I keep smoothing that, it's going to kind of bring it in line with the rest, kind of just smooth out the edge flow. Doesn't work all the time, but it's alright. And then we could do the exact same thing on the other side there. And right now I think I'll leave that where it is, because I could continue going on, but I think we've covered some basic ways of doing that way, and then we just go do the same thing all over the object. Try to keep it as low poly as possible, but again, once we've made it, maybe we'll decide we don't want this edge loop, so delete that, and then we could delete that one as well, you know, and just make it even more low poly on the ones that we feel like we don't need. And then finally we've got this really high poly kind of bumpy surface, and if I try and go in there and delete edge loops, it's alright, but we're also destroying the shape. So really for something like this I feel like it's more necessary to just use a modifier, and I'm going to use the remesh modifier, or unsubdivide as a I've forgotten which one it is now. I think it's the remesh. Oh yeah, decimate. Yeah, we can use decimate just to fix this object. So at the moment it's too high poly, it's on smooth shading, and this can destroy your object, but it's pretty much going to try and keep the same shape. So we can see the difference between that and that, and it seems like a good idea to maybe use this on everything, but when I put smooth shading back on, you're not going to tell too much of a difference. It might seem like a good idea to use that on maybe this, but really it messes up the object shape. If I apply it and look at it, it kind of makes loads of triangles, it merges vertexes randomly, kind of makes it really hard to kind of then fix from here. But we can bring it down to a fairly low poly if it's a really complicated object. So I'm just going to do that, and we can look at the different types. It's pretty much the same. This one's unsubdivide, so it's going to try and merge them together, which has created, you know, depending on the situation. I can apply this, see what it's done. It's kept the edge flow, probably because it's been created in Blender anyway, and I haven't really messed it around very much. But yep, that can be used to keep the shape, but keep the same shape without doing too much work. But I might want to go in here and merge some of these so that I have some less polys. So I'm going to do that. I don't know about this last one, I never use it. Yeah, I'd pretty much stick to the first two. But that's how I would be doing that. And ZBrush and things, they have the same kind of automatic remesh tools, which can get your shape to low poly. But for things like I modelled some hair, something like some mesh hair, and I made a high poly model in ZBrush, and then I used the automatic remesh in ZBrush, and then I fixed it in 3ds Max, just the same way that we would be merging things together and deleting a few vertices and all that, and then you can bake down. So it's quite a long process, but I feel like these 3 different techniques are the ones that you'll need to follow. And I'm just going to quickly open a file that I made, and I'm not sure, I've got a few files of the same thing here, but I'm going to go with this one, which is probably my most recent one. And what we've got here is a low poly object, so we can see the low poly, which maybe it's got some vertices in there that I could get rid of, like I have to keep these ones for different reasons, but I think it's pretty much like I can get rid of that. The reason that I didn't is because I mirrored it from those points if I needed to change anything. But I've created this using the same techniques. So we've got the high poly on the other layer here, which should, yeah, it's still got all the modifiers on it, so we can look at it, maybe isolate a shape here, and so that's the high poly shape here. We can see the model of it has been mirrored, and the actual edge flow of it I'm quite happy with, but at the moment it's not very low poly. So we've got the high poly, I can apply it, duplicate it, and then start creating the low poly, which I'm going to go look at now, the same shape. So this one's all been merged, so I'm just going to and this is the low poly equivalent, so we can see the differences here. And I've gone through it, I've merged things, I've tried to keep the exact same shape, or it is the exact same shape, but a lot less vertices. And as I say, I could probably merge some of these away, but they were used for mirroring it, and if I need to make changes in the future, then I kept the mirror lines in so that I could easily change this part here and mirror it back across and across. But that's pretty much how that's done. So I thank you for watching, and I hope you found this video useful. Although it was very basic and the examples are a bit messy, I hope that it'll fit to the purpose that you need to make low poly for a model. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.